Tanbrickz. I'm very excited to be reviewing Tanbrickz's Venator-class Star Destroyer model today. As a reminder, subscribing to the channel and giving this review a like is always an awesome way to support us, and your support means more great MOC reviews in the future. The Venator, of course, was the backbone of the Republic's fleet, and we first see them at the beginning of the Revenge of the Sith over Coruscant. The Venators played a key role throughout the Clone Wars and early into the Imperial era, with Admiral Rampage's squadron destroying Tapoka City on Kamino at the end of the Bad Batch's first season. In my reviews, I offer my opinions on aesthetics and model features, parts issues you might want to look out for, the build experience, the model's integrity, and last but not least, I offer a conclusion with pricing information. If you're watching this, I assume that you've bought the instructions or are interested in buying them. I also assume a basic level of familiarity with Bricklink's ordering system and with LEGO nomenclature. My disclaimer on this and all my MOC reviews is that I only use genuine LEGO bricks and I always purchase the instructions. Lastly, I create these reviews for my own personal enjoyment and in the hopes that my advice will make your experience more enjoyable and or less expensive. Tanbrickz's Venator measures 25 inches or 64 centimeters from front to back, about 12.5 inches or 32 centimeters from side to side, and it is about 11.5 inches, 29 centimeters tall on its stand from here to here, and without the stand it measures just about 7.5 inches or 19 centimeters for just the ship itself. For the review, I'm going to leave it on the stand just because it makes it a little easier. Also, there's not really a great spot or a great way to put it without the stand. So more on that later. In terms of proportion, this is almost exactly right as far as the length to width goes. The ratio between the length and width for the Venator in Canon is just about 2:1. The model is a touch taller than it should be, only by about 1 brick or so. It's not really noticeable. Starting with the front, the shaping at the tip of the bow is excellent, and on a technical note, it's going to be a little bit difficult for me to show some of these views just because of the size and weight of this thing, but I'll do my best. So the shaping at the very tip of the bow looks really great from here, and you can see how well the major sections of the ship fit together. There's really clean lines all down the side, and very, very minimal gaps for LEGO here. I was particularly impressed how there's almost no gap between like the top and bottom section here. There's a little bit of play, but the greebling strips line up really well. And these hull sections also, very little gap in between the gray and the red here. The greebling strips on either side are mirror images of each other. They're exactly the same, just opposite, and they're also surprisingly deep. They're 3 or 4 plates worth in some places. And there's nice use of trans blue. You can kind of see like here and here, peeking out from in between the grill tiles, just to kind of give the impression that there are people working and living in the Venator, which of course there are. The cutout for the turbo laser here is framed on the top by these plate and tile assemblies. I actually really like how Tanbrickz did those. And it does a nice job of smoothing out this edge, and you can kind of see this edge in contrast to the bottom one where it's just the wedges and the little stud gaps there. The upper hull is a nice balance between studded and non. Of course, there's no way of getting around the studs on the wedges, but there's tiles pretty much everywhere else and some ingots and other greebling features. And of course, the 2 Brick Built Republic logos look really good as specified. On Instagram, I did post some pictures where I switched these out for the 6x6 stickered tiles from set 8039, which I think also look really good. And it's not really a big thing, but my only real issue with the brick-built version of the logo is that you can kind of see, if I hold it up here, that it's in relief from the surface. So it's obviously 1 tile's height above the surface of the rest of the ship, and there's not really a way to get around that. But I think I would prefer it if it was flush, but then you're dealing with gaps in the tiled surfaces. So overall it's just kind of personal taste, but this looks really good as it is. The central red stripe representing the main hangar bay. In Canon, of course, the splits open like that. You can't do that at this scale. And I think the only thing that I would have liked a little better if the center line could have been maintained all the way down, just to give that illusion or appearance of being able to split open in the center. Definitely not a big deal. Maybe some of the newer like 2x6 tiles that came in with the Titanic could have been used instead of all these 2x2s. But again, it's a minor thing. And my favorite little detail on this model, actually, even though it's a weird thing to be a favorite detail, is how he does put in this little red triangle right at the top of the red strip here by using these kind of opposite wedges here. This is Canon accurate, and I just thought that was a nice touch visually. Moving further back along the hull, the 8 turbo laser batteries, 4 on each side, on either side of the bridge structure, look really good. And I mentioned the 5 red stripes on the rear wings. The greeveling strip continues down the length of the cruiser, and it has the representation of the lateral hangar bays. The split bridge section on this model is really well done, and it's nice that there are enough different kinds of slopes to get these varying angles. And the center section just kind of drops in there, and it's its own 1x2 assembly, essentially. There's really no appreciable gap, and there's a little bit here where this whole section is all one big section, and it kind of clips into the center section. Minimal gap here, nothing too serious. On the rear of the ship, the 5 large engines are present as you'd expect, with the tried and true method of arranging clip pieces around the modified 2x2 plate with octagonal bar frame. You can just see them here. The 5th engine is very small, it's just in the back here, you can barely see it. Overall, these engines look really good. The smaller engines are just using a snot assembly, and all 4 of them are reasonably accurate. The largest 2, even though they are very long and they only connect back here at this end, they don't sag very well or very much, which is awesome. And if I can handle this such that I can show you, let's see, what is the best way to do this? Take the stand off. Tanbrickz did include kind of a clever little bar assembly right here that gives it a little bit more support on the bottom there. To either side of the engine, the greeveling strip on the back is just flat across. I think that in Canon this is supposed to be kind of V-shaped like you see on the Star Destroyer. That would be extremely difficult to implement at this scale, so this is perfectly fine. And turning the model over to show you the bottom. Again, you can see a little bit of the inside Technic structure there, but again, overall, a really nice balance of studded and non-studded. These are kind of larger modified tiles. And then again, the stripes on the bottom. Obviously, I don't think that you're going to be displaying this such that you see the bottom very much, but it is nice that Tanbrickz included the variation in the stripe here. There's the representation of the hangar bay. This turntable is actually for part of the model I didn't build. I'll get to that later. But overall, the bottom looks excellent as well. And this is a good place to talk about the stand because I can show you how it goes in. So the stand is just a solid, well, it's a very solid block of Technic. Definitely recommend building it. You can kind of see that since the hull plates are angled a little bit, just sitting this down without the stand is kind of going to be a little awkward. So the stand just fits in here and these 2 holes at the back, and you are all set to go. I should also mention, if it sounds like I'm struggling, it's because this is a little heavy just to hold with my outstretched arms there. The exterior isn't all to this Venator though, as Tanbrickz has included 2 interior sections as well, and you access them by taking off this 1x3 tile on either side. and you lift this section up here. It's loosely secured with these double clips, and there's a tow ball piece in there. And on the starboard side, you've got a representation of the bridge or a command center in the Venator. And it's got a little display screen, some instrument panels, and a hollow table. And there's some space that you can post crew members or whatever there. And on the port side, you've got a medical bay with a scanner and a place to put one's helmet if you need to remove your inhibitor chip, as well as some containers to store weapons or whatever else. Neither section is tall enough to have a minifigure stand up while the panels are on, but they could sit down if you wanted, but I think that if you're playing with this, then you're going to have the panels off anyway. But this is a really nice touch, and it just adds kind of to the appeal, if you will, if you're into playing with your large scale models. I just thought these were kind of cool. They don't add too many extra pieces, and it's definitely something that sets this Venator apart from most of the others that I've seen. The one part that I did not elect to build is kind of like a blue laser beam, and it goes on the underside on that turntable. I'm not exactly sure what this is supposed to represent, but since I knew that I wanted to kind of put this on the stand and I knew that I probably wasn't going to care about that, I just eliminated all those pieces from my build. Overall, yeah, I just didn't think it added too much to the visual appeal of this model, which looks excellent as is. If you've watched my channel for any length of time, you know that I am more an original trilogy fan than Clone Wars, but I really think that anyone can appreciate this model and how good it looks from whatever angle you happen to see it. The dark red on light bluish gray is really striking, and Tanbrickz I think did an incredible job with the angles and all the details on this model. This model contains 402 elements and a total of 3,201 pieces, which includes the stand. Tanbrickz has very helpfully marked pieces that are hidden in red in the parts list, totaling 45 elements and 258 pieces. These are all fairly common parts, so if you've got a spare spin handy, you might be able to knock out between 5 and 8% of the total immediately. I'm not a fan of interiors on large capital ship models because I'm not building these for their play features. My preference would be for the interior pieces to be notated with a comment, so I could have easily excluded them. However, this comment is not present. But if you don't care about the interior sections, you can omit the following pieces and skip steps 657 to 735. And this is going to be a pretty long list, so just pause it if you care. And the parts in the following list are contained in the central spine of the Venator. These aren't hidden if you pop off the top hull assemblies and access the interior, but I don't think seeing a bunch of colors is going to matter to most people if you're building this as a display model, and you can kind of see part of the frame inside here. Take note that this is not an extensive list, but more focuses on the pieces that might be more expensive than others, and this doesn't cover the parts that Tanbrickz has already marked as being substitutable. And the pieces in the following list comprise the laser beam coming from the belly of the ship. Again, this is the one that I elected not to build. And onto some specific pieces. All 4 plate modified 2x3 with hole, part 3176 in dark bluish gray, are hidden and can be any color. These are used to make the bow connection of the greebling strips along the side, and they sit right about here. I already mentioned one of the black 2x2 curved inverted slopes, part 32803, could be omitted if you don't want to build the interior, but all 7 of them specified can be any color as they are hidden, and those are mostly used as reinforcements. The 2 brick modified 1x1 with studs on 4 sides in dark bluish gray, part 4733, can be any color, as these are the snot bricks used to create these rear engine sections, and the tiles just stick onto there. There are 2 plate round 2x2 with rounded bottom, the boat studs, part 2654, specified in red, meaning they can be any color. However, there are 23 of them specified in dark bluish gray. None of these are visible in the first place, And in my opinion, all 25 of them could be any color. And they're used mostly to reinforce certain intersections on the large plate assemblies that make up the upper hull and the lower hull. Alternatively, the turntable 2x2 plate top, part 3679, will work fine as well, serves the same purpose. There are 6 plate modified 1x2 with open O clips, horizontal grip, part 60470B, specified in black. And these can be any neutral color. Actually, they can really be any color, as they form the connection points for the upper hull panels, you can see right here. The 4 plate 4x12 in light bluish gray, part 3029, are hidden and can be any color. These are part of the innermost layers of the top hull assemblies, so they're underneath all these tiles. The 2 6x10 plates, part 3033, in dark bluish gray are hidden and can be any color. The 12 hinge plate 1x2 locking with one finger on end, part 44301B, and its counterpart, the hinge plate 1x2 locking with 2 fingers on end and 7 teeth, part 54657, are specified in light bluish gray. See them here, and these make up the angles for the greavling strip. So you can see that this is all one section, and it hinges together with these sections here, and those hinge plates make the angles. Light bluish gray is already quite common, but dark bluish gray or black are also common as well, but any color really works here. The 4 brick 2x2 in dark bluish gray, part 3003, are completely hidden in the final build and can be any color. These form part of the connection for the greavling strip to the frame. The 8 plate modified 1x2 with bar handle on end, part 60478, specified in black, can be any color. And these form the connection points of the upper part of the hull to the central frame here. The 8 plate modified 1x2 with pinhole on bottom, part 18677 in light bluish gray, are hidden and can be any color, and these form the connection points for the rear engine sections to the frame. Finally, here's my list of pieces that were either significantly cheaper off LEGO's Bricks and Pieces or Pick-a-Brick services. I will warn you that I built this in October and November of 2021, and both services were running significantly faster at the time. Currently, in late January of 2022, Bricks and Pieces is taking between 5 and 6 weeks just to ship, with another 1 to 2 weeks for delivery. However, the price comparison of certain items made the wait worth it for me due to the quantities involved. The Venator build took me about 16 hours over 4 days, with a lot of that time due to my practice of not sorting out anything beforehand. There are 1,973 steps, including the stand, and each piece you add in a given step is outlined in red, which typically works out just fine. There's usually only 1 or 2 pieces added in a given step, and sometimes I feel like these could be combined as it's a pretty long build. For example, steps 226 to 232, this is part of the rear section here. They have you adding 1 2x3 plate in each of those steps, and they just make a simple row, so I feel like those could be combined. There's also a lot of repetition for small subassemblies that could use a multiplier instead of showing every single iteration. And some examples of that include these turbo laser batteries. The engines are exactly the same on either side, so you could use an X2 there, or times 2. The bridge assemblies are both the same. And lastly, each one of these small sections of the engine are listed out in sequence. So you could just put like a times 7, I think, there, or something like that. But, not a big deal in the end. It just is more scrolling. Occasionally, the connection points aren't obvious, and I think the instructions could do a little better job of pointing them out. This is most obvious on the large assemblies that connect to the spine very early in the build. And for example, step 370, highlighting the connection points where the green circles are would have been nice, but instead you're kind of left to figure this out for yourself. And attaching the bottom panels was another example in which the viewing angle doesn't show you the connection points. I also had difficulty getting a couple of the connections to work. Snapping the bridge, this top section with the ribbed stripe is all one big assembly that you snap in step 656. In both instances, there were some problems with the parts you've already put in place being in the way, and you had to remove them in kind of uncomfortable ways to make it work. For the bottom section, the two Technic lift arms, they have to be forced apart to make the pin connections. And for the bridge and top sections, the pieces are in the way from building the frame. And you have to put a lot of strain on the other Technic lift arms to spread them apart enough to get the pins in. So attaching the 1x3 lift arms should be moved to immediately after you slide the top assembly in place. You can see one of them here, one here. And there's also a sequencing error in step 18 by leaving the 3L Technic pins as shown. It's impossible to make the connection near the nose as the instructions tell you to, and you have to wait to put the 7L lift arms until step 657 until you get the top assembly in place. So I left this here just to show you. So basically it tells you to do this. This should actually be inside here. Alternatively, the new Technic pin 3L without friction ridges would stop. Part 77765 installed in step 657 would solve the problem as well. I have a lot of difficulty getting the bow connection to work for the greebling strips. The greebling strips are joined with hinge plates to make these angles, like I said earlier, and they anchor in two spots. It was a tight fit for me, and every time I tried to make the tow ball connection towards the bow, either this assembly here would pop out or the socket would pop out. I've reinforced the toe balls with plates because the hollow studs on the inverted slopes were not giving me enough clutch. This might have been an issue with used parts versus new, or perhaps I have something slightly off, but I think it's a tight fit either way. And last but not least, the stand instructions are at the very end of the build, but I actually recommend building the stand immediately after getting the top section on, right after step 656. This gives you a nice spot to rest the model on, and actually does make it easier, in my opinion, to get some of the bottom panels to connect. Well, mostly because you can see under it to kind of see what you're doing. This is a very solid model overall, and the only real weak areas are the engine assemblies. The ends of the two larger engines can be knocked off fairly easily, like so, while the two smaller engines are also rather easy to disconnect, especially this one, which is just kind of hanging there. And this one, I'm not going to take it off just because that one's a little more annoying to get back in, but it's also just connected with basically two studs. On my model, the bottom panels were coming loose pretty frequently. Again, this might be due to new versus used parts, but I think the real issue is that the inverted slopes, again, use hollow studs and don't have enough clutch to hold the connection reliably. If you modify this connection and reinforce the modified plate with with plates and solid studs, it holds without any issues. But like I said earlier, the stand is very solid, and this is not a model you should build without a stand. The model is pretty easy to lift off the stand and put back on. You see me do it a couple times, so I don't worry about casually handling this, even though I think most of the time it's going to sit on the stand and be a nice display piece. There is a lot to love about Tanbrickz's Venator model, and it fills a gaping hole that LEGO has left in their lineup in the absence of an official display scale model. The only Venator LEGO has made is Set 8039, which I happen to like a lot for what it is. But as you can tell, this is definitely not up to modern standards. So while Tanbrickz's Venator is not in true UCS scale, I think it needs to be a little bit bigger. It's actually much more manageable in terms of size and displayability, in my opinion. You can stick this in most places in your house, and it's not going to absolutely take over your shelf space or anything like that, but it's definitely still big enough to be impressive and grab people's attention. In terms of cost, the instructions are $15 on Rebrickable. For the pieces, when I ran the Bricklink algorithm in late January 2022, I got just 4 stores and $350 before shipping and tax, which probably comes out to about $400 after shipping and tax. Like I stated in the part section, I think Bricks and Pieces or Pick-a-Brick is definitely worth investigating for the more expensive elements that you need in large quantities, in particular the tiles and the wedges. If you exclude the interior sections, I got the cost down to $318 in 4 stores, or about $365 after shipping and tax. As you all watched the CAT stress test here, I did not plan to keep this model assembled after I did this review, mostly to save money on the hundreds of tiles and wedges I'm going to need to build the Torment when I get around to that one. But after building it, I think this one is going to stay on the shelf for a while. It's impressive without being overpowering. It's got a really stable and good looking stand, and it's definitely a welcome change of pace from the smaller starfighters that I usually do. The instructions definitely aren't perfect, but there aren't many major structural or procedural problems you can't overcome if you're experienced and patient enough to make it this far in a very long review. In closing, it's very apparent that Tanbrickz spent a ton of time getting everything just right, and I highly recommend this model if you're looking for a Venator display model. A link to the instructions as well as Tanbrickz's video for this model will be in the description. Thanks as always for taking the time to watch my review of Tanbrickz's Venator Star Destroyer. If you've built this model, you have something to share that I left out, or have a question about something I didn't cover, please leave them below in the comments. Also, please consider liking the video, subscribing to the channel, or following me on Instagram. I hope to see you back next time.